The ridiculous premise of NCIS Season 22 somehow renders Leroy Jethro Gibbs' last major case response team, MCRT, crime nearly unforgivable. After leading NCIS for over 20 years, Mark Harmon departed the program in recent years. Because the actor's intention to leave the production was known in advance, the authors were able to prepare a fitting farewell for Gibbs. Therefore, NCIS Season 19 was allowed to address a lengthy farewell for its previous leader, rather than a sudden departure like that of Ellie Bishop or a startling death like that of Jenny Shepard. Gibbs' desire for a new life from the one he had led since the passing of his first wife and daughter, Shannon and Kelly, ultimately drove him to leave the organization he had worked for decades. According to the plot of NCIS Origins, he chose to retire in Naktok Bay, Alaska after his last case, and he is reportedly still there today. The work of MCRT is still being carried out at Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., under the direction of Alden Parker, who succeeded his predecessor. However, Gibbs is still mentioned in NCIS on occasion, which affects his whole narrative in the procedural. In Hardboiled, the 7th episode of NCIS Season 22, MCRT was tasked with looking into a complex case involving both a personal affair and possible treachery, both of which had a connection to Nick Torres. In addition to being a reminder of the show's ability to maximize its procedural approach, the mystery itself was very intricate. However, NBC counterbalanced it with a B-plot that focused on Jimmy Palmer and Tim McGee officiating in the neighborhood children's soccer league. The two, who had been friends and co-workers for a long time, ended up fighting over a decision. But Palmer disclosed his resignation during their last discussion of the issue. He explained that he began the work as a means of regaining some control after Brina passed away from COVID-19 since the regulations were simple for him to follow. Harmon's character in NCIS is synonymous with the rules. Gibbs was taught a set of rules by his first wife, and he followed them. They also held him in check while they dealt with that enormous loss, as seen in NCIS Origins. Palmer, for whatever reason, similarly relied on rules to cope with his loss. One of the several indirect effects that Gibbs has had on Palmer is his reliance on rules to restructure his life following the death of Brina. The current medical examiner for MCRT has experienced a great deal in his life, much like the rest of the team. Regretfully, the arcs of other characters frequently eclipse them. In addition to serving as a reminder of Gibbs' legacy, it also reminded us that Harmon's character never bid Palmer farewell. Gibbs had a final departure moment with each member of his longtime crew in NCIS Season 19, but he did not have one with Palmer. The saddest thing about this is that Gibbs knew Palmer's greatest regret was that he would never be able to say goodbye to Brina. Palmer's entire cheerful facade crumbled as Gibbs consoled his subordinate in the lab, remembering that he was not allowed to visit her. Given what transpired with Brina, Gibbs may have been aware that skipping a last talk with Palmer would worsen his anguish. Palmer has been with NCIS since Season 1, even though they didn't collaborate as often as McGee. Before he went, he had earned his own time with Gibbs. Palmer becomes the longest-running cast member of NCIS, joining McGee, despite the fact that the program no longer has any original characters. Both were originally included in the first year of the event and grew in prominence throughout the course of the year. Despite this, McGee's tale is more significant since, as a field agent, his work with the other members of his team dominated the weekly episodes of NCIS. Palmer's work is similarly significant, but he rarely interacted with Gibbs since he is often locked in a lab. Palmer instead worked mostly as a body examiner with his instructor, Ducky Mallard. When the MCRT semi-turned-NCIS historian passed away in Season 21, he was selected to give the eulogy for the same reason. Nevertheless, Palmer was entitled to his private meeting with Gibbs before Harmon's departure. It's currently hard to predict if or when the two will return on NCIS.